In a land of myth and a time of magic, the destiny of a great kingdom rests on the shoulders of a young boy. His name, Merlin.
Hello, my lovely little nomads and party people and strangers everywhere. My name is V, and welcome back to the weekly retrospective of Merlin. I know it's not a Tuesday that we're going to be turning up on, but we've been having some shit going on at real life stuff, so instead I decided to make it up for you guys by having not only one, not only two, but 3 retrospective episodes of Merlin. That way you guys are covered not only for last week and this week, but next week. That way, as soon as Thursday rolls in, we also begin our new retrospective thing that I'm pretty sure you guys are gonna like. Along with the fact that we're also gonna be starting some live stream stuff soon, but that's for another topic. Right now, we're gonna be focusing on the 6th episode of Merlin's first series of A Remedy to Cure All Ills, which is actually a very interesting show run episode for me because it kind of gives me a sympathetic antagonist that I kind of agree with. But we'll get into that in a minute. Let us get on with it. First, we have the title opening sequence like what we have with our show, as standard laissez-faire. But the episode actually opens up to shots of a hooded figure just putting together something inside of a box involving flowers involving insects. So you're gonna be a little confused, like why does this idiot have flowers? Why does this idiot have insects? And what does that have to do with the plot? Get this though, when he has the flowers with the insects inside the flowers set off to Camelot, it's then given to Gwen. And Gwen in turn gives it to, you guessed it, Morgana. And Morgana has the flowers set right next to her bed. I'm trying to remember where it is on the set because they had it in one shot by a nightstand, and then the next shot it was by a different nightstand, so it might have been a camera error or set malfunction or whatever. But the insect during nightfall crawls out of the flower and then crawls inside of Morgana's ear, as the hooded figure in all of night is just standing in front of the courtyard of Camelot watching the actions as if he's inside the room itself. And yet during that time, when it's finally inside of her ear, the hood figure leaves the grounds as Morgana is just sleeping, or so we think. And then we have the opening sequence once again, where then we open up to guys examining Morgana, and quite frankly, no one knows what's wrong with her. She's been in a coma for about 2 days. So apparently 2 days passed, we had no idea because time! Why do we even have it in Merlin's first season? Time's irrelevant. My only gripe with this show right now. So anyway, we have to have Uther whining and bitching at Gaius for not knowing Morgana's condition, since Gaius doesn't even know what the actual illness is, so Uther has to bitch at him over something that he should know when no one even knows what's going on. Wait, what? So, from just the simple evaluation from what Gaius only knows since he doesn't have audience vision, is that he thinks it's a cerebral inflammation due to an infection. Interesting choice. So Gaius and Merlin, after he does the examination and is leaving Uther, of course, have a discussion on what's going on, and then Merlin brings up trying to fix things with magic. And yet, during that point, we have a callback to an earlier episode of The Mark of Nimue, where Merlin cured Gwen's father, and then Gwen's father was accused of some stuff where Gwen was... If you guys want to know what happened, we already have that review up for you guys, so I don't have to drag back all the callbacks to my own callback. That way we can get on fresh. I'm sorry, I just want you guys to get the fresh. And I'm going to stop saying fresh. Right now, fresh. So, in turn, Gaius is like, we gonna settle this with science, motherfucker. Science, bitch. Now give me these ingredients. If you excuse me, I'm gonna be a pimp somewhere else. Gaius, out. And so Merlin runs off to get the ingredients, sure. But, in another part of the castle, we have Arthur meeting the hooded figure, who we find out is named Edwin Muirden. It's actually a pretty awesome last name. Someone remember that for my book. Someone remember that last name for my book, please. So, Edwin decides that he wants to get an audience with the king, but I want to point out something before we get on with the rest of this. Apparently, Edwin has a very interesting facial scar. Kind of like a certain other character that we know. If only I could show clips. Anywho, Edwin says that he wants to get an audience with Uther over a cure for Morgana because he says that he has a remedy to cure all ills. Title drop! And yet, Arthur initially rebukes the offer, saying that they already have a court physician that is already on the case. But then Edwin just states that he'll be waiting at the inn in case they want to change their mind and have them cure Morgana instead. Mostly because the audience knows he's the one that did the cursing already, but the rest of the cast doesn't know that. So, by nightfall, Merlin and Arthur are just getting all anxious and nervous, pacing around, tapping their fingers on the desk. You know, the typical traits that you have for characters that get nervous and anxious. I mean, if it was like a pregnancy scene, you'd see a dad smoking a cigar, pacing around, and just looking at his clock all the time. When is this damn baby coming out? Anywho, during this time, Morgana, according to Gaius, in her current condition, has mere hours to live because there is no cure in sight. Oh, if only there was something that they could do involving mysticism that could obviously cure this disease that no means of science can cure. Like if there was not this petty law out there that bans such means in a world where magic could be used to cure things of this nature. If there wasn't an insane king that's very magic fearing. If only that thing wasn't involved so we can get that one thing that we needed to cure this illness here. But alas we do. So, in a rebuttal for this, Arthur brings up the offer that Edwin gave him earlier, so that the plot can proceed on schedule. See, guys, we're not all perfect. Some YouTubers have to screw up on camera for you guys to see that we're human. And so, Uther and Gaius, in a slight bit of giving up, not wanting to experiment even more and stuff, because at this point it's just like we're only maybe 9 to 10 minutes in. Why even bother having another solution? They take up Edwin's offer for the sake of Morgana's health, instead of, you know, getting rid of the stupid law of magic just this once so that Gaius can cure her, or better yet, get Merlin in a disguise to cure Morgana faster and make Uther kind of admit that he was wrong. That works too. Anywho, Uther and Edwin officially meet, and it would appear that he seems familiar to Gaius. Maybe because that facial wound on him looks very familiar, but we won't know why for another couple of segments. So, Edwin does this whole spiel on his work and for his so-called reasons for being in Camelot, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I wasn't paying attention at all to his spiel. I was in the middle of something where I was just thinking about either cupcakes for some reason. Now I remembered, oh, I wanted to eat cupcakes, but when am I gonna get cupcakes at like 9 at night where all the good bakery stuff is kind of closed down? And then I also all of a sudden thought about making my own cupcakes, but I didn't have the batter. Anyway, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, Edwin being Edwin for the sake of being Edwin. So, in response to everything, Gaius finds Edwin a little suspicious, while Edwin in turn tries to praise Gaius to throw him off. I see what you did there, writers, making an antagonist that can throw people off his scent by being charming and charismatic. you get a cookie. Anywho, Edwin decides to challenge Gaius' diagnosis to see if he can cure Morgana. I guess they ain't gonna put no respect on his name. And so Uther and Arthur allow Edwin a room, use of his own equipment, and usage of Merlin. Oh, slavery. Aren't you just great in a time span like this? Anywho, during the time that we actually get to see Edwin's equipment, it's actually pretty interesting to note that for historical records, this was actually a good alchemic set used for infusion, chemical infusions, and deconstructions of cells and atoms to formulate into new batters of elements. At least that's what Julian, Edward, and Nick have been telling me for scientific evaluation. I was just like, oh, it's an alchemy set. Because in the show, they were trying to say that the alchemic set was prior used to make gold, because that's what alchemy was once looked upon to do. I wasn't looking for a scientific explanation, but there you go. There's your little backstory from some science people that really love science for some reason. Anywho, Merlin and Edward eventually actually have a conversation on intellect and science, albeit an awkward and weird one, before we proceed on to the plot where Edwin begins his cure. I would put up air quotations, but I think that would be irrelevant at this point. His cure for Morgana, but requests for everyone to leave the room, especially Gaius, cause like I said, they ain't no respect on his name. They throwing no respect on his name like they did for Birdman in that interview. So, in private, when everyone's away as far as he's concerned, Edwin decides to use his magical incantations to make whatever he put inside Morgana to come out of her, but not before Gwen walks in on him during his procedure, but just so happening to miss the incantation part, which is going to be very crucial for the plot later, so we're going to store that nugget away. And then just fast forward to Edwin famously curing her with very little problems. So, we just gotta figure out what is his plan at this point. Anywho, Edwin delivers his false diagnosis to Uther and to Arthur, while Uther decides to doubt Gaius' ability due to Edwin finally curing Morgana for a disease that none of them ever knew about. So it's like, is Uther really serious at this point? Is he seriously blaming Gaius and saying he's incompetent for a disease no one knew about? Because I think that's how medical science works. You have a disease that happens, and then you make a scientific examination, and then create a cure for said illness to create an actual steady cure in place, but whatever. But anyway, Morgana's cured. Yay! I want to be glad, but if you all have seen the show like I have, you're kind of like, is this good? Is it? Is it? But not before Edwin had to insert some jabs at Gaius' ability as a physician in front of Uther. Again, what is his end goal at this point? We're not sure. So then Gaius tries to follow up and understand Edwin's methods, but Edwin, being evasive, just says he's not comfortable sharing his secrets yet, even trying to put away that he ever met Gaius, while also dismissing his facial scar that happens to be on the right side of his face. Again, this seems very familiar to a character I know. It's on the tip of my tongue. So, because he cured Morgana, Uther wants to give him a reward, but Edwin's just like, nah, man, I just want to make sure that she's cured so I can be on my way. But Uther tries to offer Edwin a room in his palace, as well as offering him a position of being a physician in his court. But the limit for what the offer is going to be over dinner with him. Insert your own gay doujinshi sort of fan fiction here about Uther playing for both sides if you want to. I'm too lazy and bored to do that. But following from the Edwin and Uther contest of possible shipping moments, we move on to revisiting the Library of Camelot, where we see Gandalf the Librarian. I know it's not his name. We find out his name in this episode is Jeffrey, but he looks like what was supposed to be Gandalf. He is Gandalf the Librarian. So anyway, Gandalf the Librarian is just talking to guys who they've apparently they've known each other for years. And yet Gaius just wants to get records on a historical thing within Camelot called the Great Purge, where you learn in this episode that the Great Purge was when Uther himself wanted to kill all the magic users within Camelot in his war against magic, which is still kind of the stupidest reason that we'll get into about why he did this. So, when Gaius is just trying to get those records, Gandalf the Librarian points out that Uther has labeled them forbidden, and to get those would be kind of illegal, so he cannot give him the records, despite the fact that they are good friends and it would be really relevant to the plot at this point in time. So, that restricts Gaius for the moment. What about Merlin? What's he doing at the moment? Well, he's stumbling through trying to look for Edwin, where he finds his insect box and uses his all-powerful magic to bring the insects inside that insect box to life, while getting Edwin to walk in to find out his secret. Oh boy. Oh, Merlin, you done fucked up. Wait. But then Edwin decides to explain a portion of his truth to Merlin, saying that the beetles inside the insect box cured Morgana, leaving out the all-key factor that we all know and love since we've seen the beginning of the episode. Where afterwards, Edwin and Merlin actually have a really good discussion on the nature of magic and how it could be a benefit to life instead of a hindrance due to Uther's law. Which is kind of refreshing to hear Merlin and an antagonist actually talk about the nature of magic actually being a benefit for Camelot, rather than just them being overly antagonistic towards one another from the get-go. It kind of helps that in a giant way when you're just honestly two characters of the same bread and butter actually hashing stuff out before a big conflict. And I actually applaud that motive. Where we then have some small little segments showcasing that Edwin is a skillful magic user. We all know in the end that if they come to a fight, Merlin's going to prove to be the better one and kill him, because that's the fate of everyone that fights Merlin. Seriously, if you watch the show long enough, you're kind of like, you may be good, but if you're magic, you're going to lose to Merlin. And if you're physical, Arthur is going to win with Merlin actually saving him. At this point, it's kind of like Uther is useless. Why even have him? Just have Arthur and Merlin run the bitch already. Run Camelot already. Still, though, we then have Edwin trying to move the plot along for a different turn of events by offering to teach Merlin his ways of magic. That actually was going to be touching if the music and his expressions didn't come off so sinister. I'd honestly rather be trained by Nimue, and that's for entirely different reasons that I'm not comfortable saying on camera. So then we have to leave there, and what is Gaius doing again? Well, it's nighttime, so he's probably in his house, but how are we going to get the plot moving again? Oh, I know. The show writers end up having Gandalf the Librarian give him the records anyway, saying that it's his own request that he would honor with Gaius so that they could make the plot move forward, saying that they are dear friends and they could honor this one thing to save Uther. Yay for plot progression! Yay! I had to make the voice crack so you guys would see that it has to be that way. So, Edwin and Uther over dinner have a discussion on Gaius' abilities as a physician and Morgana's dreams. where you all should know by now that it's just Edwin making jabs at Gaius and trying to discredit him in front of Uther so that he could get closer onto the records to further discredit Gaius. But for what method and for what reason? That is the bigger question. So, with Uther just giving him the grounds to do a review on all of his works, we're then going to skip ahead to the next day, where Gaius awakens after going through all the records to find out that Edwin is a former citizen of Camelot. And he was a child from the Great Purge, where it actually explains a bit of his motive, where his parents of Gregor and Jade, never giving their actual last names, were two sorcerers that were set to burn at the stakes by Uther, and Edwin actually ran into the fire trying to save his parents, where all he remembered was hearing their screams of agony and pain. I think that would lead a lot of people to being a psychotic murderer and using dark magic, trying to kill people. But Gaius is trying to say that if he doesn't try to leave, he will expose his secret to Uther. But as a rebuttal, Edwin also threatens to expose Merlin. And this progresses for a sadly long amount of time, where Gaius, at the end of it all, after having his entire work discredited by Edwin, because he's trying to get closer to Uther for a reason we'll get into in a moment. As I take off my glasses, I will tell you guys how serious I am. During this moment in time where Uther has all the stuff for a discredited notion towards Gaius, and Gaius cannot say anything, he loses his job as a physician. He's saying that he's going to leave Camelot to save Merlin, all at the risk of not having Merlin's secret revealed. But here are the notes behind why. During a conversation piece that Gaius later on in the episode has with John Hurtdragon, reappearing after maybe 2 or 3 episodes, actually has a discuss on the topic of Merlin and Arthur's future and destiny, again the running theme of the series, where it's proven that Arthur and Merlin's time will not come until the end of Uther, but that will not come until the choice is made on when Uther's end comes, which then goes back into Uther letting go of Gaius, that section of what I was talking about. However, this is actually one of the only times in the series, to my knowledge, where Uther isn't an ignorant asshole. He's not being overtly mean. He's not being a complete cruel, dickish dumbass that cannot admit that he's wrong. This is actually a moment in time where he is a sincere and compassionate individual towards Gaius. He's openly distraught that he's going to let go of his best friend of being a physician in the trusting care of a younger, kind of insane looking man over someone that has been with him for years and would do anything for his family. And it's kind of touching and heartwarming, but at the same time, it's kind of cut very briefly by the end of the episode. And when he's saying that he's going to leave Camelot because he has no further use inside of it, we have a moment in time where Merlin and Gaius actually confirm what we've all been saying for the past couple of episodes, that Gaius and Merlin are basically a father and son pair that have grown closer and closer with every episode, and will continue to grow that way by the time the series ends. Almost as if it's reflecting the fact that they are so in tune with one another they can't even imagine losing the other in case of something were to go wrong. Sort of like an actual father and son pair that has grown to love each other that much. It's very heart-wrenching and very sad to talk about. Anyway, we then have to move back on to the plot-relevant thing, where the whole premise of where it's going to go, Edwin finds a window into trying to end Uther for the Great Purge from an old war injury on his shoulder, where it's not set into motion until the nightfall. However, we have to check in on Gaius, who's about to leave town, where Gwen actually says that she doesn't trust Edwin because she briefly saw what happened between him and Morgana's treatment, but not before ending that conversation with the running theme of the first series of Merlin, which is choice. Choice is a very big thing within the series of Merlin's first series because it tackles on a lot of things that will hinder on whether or not certain actions will happen at certain points. The choice of the matter of what will happen for a certain character or for a certain character arc all comes within the first series, which is very touched upon, very much so, in this show more than any other series that I've seen in years. Merlin captures the fact that choice can be a giant factor of a theme for any series, more so than I could ever imagine, because of its own source material being altered so well and so intricately that it has to be a running theme to show the seriousness of all things. And that is when we go back into the plot itself, where it's nightfall, because night happens, and Uther, at night, in his bed, because we all wanted to see his bedroom. Come on, ladies. Don't tell me you didn't want to see that psychopath's bedroom. Where Uther thinks that he's going to drink an elixir that will cure him, but it turns out it's a paralyzing drug. Oh, this is going to be good. So, while he's paralyzed, Edwin decides to give his whole spiel on his motives for trying to kill Uther, where he wants to end all bits of Uther as a revenge for what happened to his parents, because Gaius turned his back on everyone in the Great Purge for the sake of Uther, to end magic on his terms for Uther. And yet Uther himself killed all the people in the land of Camelot for using magic over very stupid reasons that we'll seriously get into as the review series continues. And yet Edwin's just trying to end him with his own beetles to just eat away at his brain as a method of ending him then and there to begin an era where magic will return to Camelot. Which honestly makes me wonder, who is the antagonist in this again? Because I would love to see magic return to Camelot like in the original Legends, so is Edwin seriously that bad if he's gonna kill Uther? Because I could live with Uther dying. But alas, we then have to have Gaius become the pimp that he is and return just in time to try and save Uther. I say try because in a brief moment where he runs in with Edwin, it's sadly shown that Edwin has the upper hand as a magic user because Gaius kind of forgot a lot of his magic spells, so he's kind of in a ring of fire about to die. And then how are we gonna save Gaius? Let's introduce a pipelay. So Pipelay Arthur decides to run into the plot to have Merlin look for Edwin. And as soon as he finds Edwin, we then have a small little magic duel between him and Merlin, because Merlin's like, "You trying to kill my daddy? Join me." "No!" "Fine then, die." And so Edwin tries to end him by magically using an axe, but Merlin, being the future supreme magical being of all time, uses his own instinctive magic to throw the axe back and just cleave Edwin dead center in his fucking skull, saving Gaius and then running in time to get to the beetles, which we find out are Elanthia beetles, which are magical insects that can enter the body, go into the brain, and feed on someone till they devour their entire souls, which is how the inflammation for Morgana began and what is going to possibly be the death of Uther. Or should have been. Possibly have been. I don't like Uther. There, I've said it. So, in the midst of it all, when they finally got all the beetles and they're just looking at Uther, just figured out what to do, Gaius decides to give Merlin the green light to save Uther with magic. I repeat, Merlin, the titular magical user of the show, is going to save Uther. Magic-hating, power-hungry, head up his own ass, vindictive, vicious, cruel, dark-hearted, dumb as fuck, Uther. Why? Anyway, Merlin successfully saves Uther. Yay, I guess. And then we had to wrap up the whole thing in a whole shebang-a-bang. Last couple of moments in the episode. Gaius and Uther end up having a small little discussion over their history together and the dark history that they've had involving the Dark Plague and Dark Purge, where Uther seemed more happy about the whole thing, while Gaius looked like, I killed so many people that could have been good and could have been reformed. The hell. So then we have to wrap up the whole Gaius being fired fiasco. So we then have Uther saying that not only is he restored as a court physician, but he's also a free man. When I originally saw this again, after so many years, I was kind of thinking to myself, so Gaius was a slave. You had a pimp be your slave, bitch. You finally put some respect on his name. All three of y'all gave him some respect on his name. And yet you had the motherfucker as your slave. This is kind of where my whole appreciation for Uther's compassion side just kind of died out when I finally had that sink in, where it was like, you had a pimp as your slave. Bitch, what the fuck? But then we have to get back into wrapping up the episode by having Merlin and Gaius discussing the last couple events of the episode, and then ending it on a joke about Gaius saying that maybe Merlin, you are a genius. Almost. One day. And then laughing off as we roll credits into the next episode we're going to be talking about. So, my final thoughts about A Cure for All Ills. Honestly, it's a very great episode. True, Edwin came off as a very sympathetic antagonist, and his methods, although very dark and sinister, kind of are what would have set in motion of a darker theme for the show if they killed off Uther sooner than expected. Having Arthur and Merlin killing off Edwin in a two-parter in order to become Albion's own focal point of having a magic-based society, and then so forth and so on, but we wouldn't have the big payoff that we have within Series 4 and 5. Albeit that would have been a very intricate sort of thing that we could have done, but I digress. And I'll even say this. This is the only episode in all of memory where I'm actually thinking to myself, Uther isn't a bad guy. He's quite frankly confused about what's right and wrong, sure, but he's not all entirely bad because he cherished Gaius beyond all words. He didn't want to lose him as a physician because they were good friends. And even Arthur wasn't that big of an asshole in this episode, mostly because he wasn't in it for a large majority of it. Other than that, though, it just kind of showed it was more of a Gaius and Uther episode, where it focused more on the history of Camelot, along with the connections that Uther and Gaius have, more so than we've ever focused on with Merlin and Arthur, without their whole growing connection with one another. And I can appreciate this because, let's face it, Gaius is like a pimp. If you wanted to have like a magical mentor for life, Gaius the Pimp is one of the high three that you want as your guide. So, I'll just say this. If you're going to pick up Series 1 from this point, you would have a fun time with A Remedy to Cure All Ills, because it honestly is a beautiful episode. However, we're going to come back tomorrow to talk about the Gates of Avalon. So all you magical users out there, keep on learning, keep on getting all of your finesse on, and I'll see you guys next time.